Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about this little video and talk about the Tom Aspinall situation once again, because once again, I did state that I wanted to get a little bit more into that of the MMA scene. And this, of course, is a very, very big spectacle because Tom Aspinall has been someone that has been on the bigger end of the hype train now, especially over that of the past 2 years ever since he was able to knock out of that one big Russian monster, Sergei Pavlovich, I believe was his name, or, whatever his name was. I cannot remember. Sergei Pavlovich or Pavlovich. I thought it was Pavlovich. But if I'm wrong about that, then, someone correct me. You know who I'm talking about. The Russian dude that was built like a tank who was all shoulders, had an 84-inch arm reach for being like 6'3". But the dude who was knocking everybody out. Tom Aspinall, of course, for those of you that do not remember, he was looked at as a great talent even before. But once I believe his ACL or whatever it was, once it ended up exploding or tearing against that of a Curtis Blades in that one fight, people had kind of forgotten about him, at least to a certain degree. And when I first seen Tom Aspinall, I believe even a few years ago, I knew that he was going to be a very special fighter. He's a very good striker. He has very good ground game. He is someone that, in my view, is not without his flaws, but he is someone overall that still is very, very special. But of course, this was the main event that many people were taking a look at because many John Jones fans and many other people as well were going to take a look and see how Tom Aspinall was going to do against probably the number one guy and the only guy at the current moment in time that probably could give him any major problems in that of a Cyril Gane, and of course how well Tom Aspinall was going to perform over Gane compared to that of a Francis Ngannou and especially that of a John Jones. And you can definitely believe that there was a lot of John Jones, fans waiting in the wings just in case Tom Aspinall was going to lose this fight or if he was not going to look impressive because they've been hearing shit, about how he's been avoiding that of a Tom Aspinall for about a couple of years now. And in my personal view, did he avoid Tom Aspinall? Yes, he did. I don't think that there's any doubt about it. At the end of the day, you had the opportunity to possibly fight him, and instead you fight Stipe Miocic, who's like 43 years old, been out for 4.5 years, or been out for about 4 years, and his last performance was a knockout dominant loss to Francis Ngannou. So give me a fucking break. And, if we're also going to go there, and John Jones is a great fighter, he's an all time great level fighter, but this is not the first time that he's avoided a true heavyweight threat. John Jones, actually, for those of you that do not remember, he was actually originally supposed to fight that of a Francis Ngannou when Ngannou finally became champion there. And what the narrative was when Ngannou finally told Dana to kick rocks because Dana White was only going to give him like $600,000 for like an 8 fight deal, which is basically nothing. At least that's the information that I remember. If I'm wrong about that, someone correct me. Then what the narrative was is that Francis Ngannou was avoiding John Jones. But actually, that's not the reality. John Jones was supposed to move up to the heavyweight division, about a few years ago, about 3 to 4 years ago. But when Francis Ngannou became the champion, John Jones basically did all the shit about, well, you know what? Let me think about my future. I need a major paycheck, all sort of stuff. And I have no problem with the fighter getting their money. But at the end of the day, it's very clear that John Jones, that he made any excuse to not fight both that of a peak Francis Ngannou and Tom Aspinall. It just is what it is. Those are the facts of the matter. People can like it, they can not like it, but that's what he did. But that being stated, I thought that we would review this little video by MMA Joey because, of course, after this spectacle, many of the Tom Aspinall critics, of course, the ones that have been getting tired of the John Jones is avoiding him narrative, when it comes down to it, they, are getting, of course, they've been basically criticized, for the past couple of years. So, of course, they've been, a little bit annoyed, felt, to be a little bit antagonized, and they're out to kind of get a chunk out of Tom Aspinall or embarrass him, for the meantime, which is, of course, how fans mainly work. They're very fickle. They're with you one day, they're not with you the next. But anyways, that being stated, MMA Joey, for anyone who is a part of the MMA community or watches a lot of YouTube channels, we all know that this man definitely has his biases. It just is what it is. And that's exactly why I wanted to review the video. Because MMA Joey, and for those of you that have not been around my channel, oftentimes I've reviewed other channels talking about their biases and talking overall about double standards. And I'm going to go into MMA a little bit more as well. Not just with MMA Joy, but perhaps MMA Guru or whatever that fight, whatever that man's name is, or whatever the channel's name is, and with some other ones. But that being stated, let's see what MMA Joey has to say. I thought it was going to be a very interesting conversation, and what the world is now asking is Tom Aspinall someone that is the most overrated heavyweight that we've seen, or is he someone that will beat Ciryl Gane in a rematch? Let's get into it.
Ciryl Gane just made Tom Aspinall quit in the main event of UFC 321. Tom Aspinall verbally tapped during a stoppage in action, ruling this fight a no contest. Now,
Right, but MMA Joey, let's not try to push this shit to where we're trying to phrase it as a knockout. What MMA Joey, and I'm not sure if he's a John Jones fan or something like that from this video and what I have seen so far, because I've watched, about half of this video. I tried to do it yesterday, but unfortunately my storage cut out on me. But he does appear to, at the very least, be a John Jones fan. We all know, for any of us that have seen his channel before, we all know that he is a major Dagestani glazer. But it is what it is. Anyways. And I have no problem with the Dagestanis. I'm someone that, once again, comes from a logical and an objective point of view. I am not someone overall, once again, that criticizes fighters just because of a certain skill set or overall just because, they come from a certain place. The Dagestanis, of course, have a very, very great program and they have great fighters. But that being said, we know that MMA Joey will defend them tooth and nail.
even though this fight is a no contest and Tom Aspinall technically retains his UFC undisputed heavyweight title, which has never been more disputed than it is right now, Francis Ngannou disputes it, John Jones disputes it, and now Ciryl Gane disputes it. So we have three people
Well, of course, John Jones is going to dispute it. John Jones has basically been raked over the coals, and deservingly so, over for the past few years, because he's basically been ducking him. And in no way am I claiming that John Jones would just 100% lose to Tom Aspinall. I think that there are certain things, as shown in this fight, that John Jones could take advantage of. But at the end of the day, either fight the dude that is next or give up the damn title. It is what it is. At the end of the day, if Tom Aspinall was the one who was champion and the title was not vacant, John Jones would have never went up to heavyweight in the first place. And I know that for a fact. You know how I know that for a fact? Because it was the same thing with Francis Ngannou. Now, certain people overall will say, well, maybe Tom Aspinall isn't as good as Francis Ngannou, and you may be correct about that. But John Jones was originally supposed to go up to heavyweight in the first place. He only did not go up to heavyweight when he realized that Francis Ngannou, who had one-shot knockout power and someone that was a legitimate threat to him, even if John Jones could outskill him in certain areas, that was John Jones then decided that he was not going to move up then until the title was vacant and Francis Ngannou was no longer around. And he could still fight someone that was very, very good in Ciryl Gane, but someone who still had flaws.
disputing Tom Aspinall's UFC undisputed heavyweight title.
Or I should say more suitable flaws for John Jones than what either a Tom Aspinall or Francis Ngannou did. Anyway.
I mean, to be honest, even though he holds that title still, Ciryl Gane won this fight via TKO, in my opinion. And I know a lot of people aren't...
No, he didn't, sir. No, he didn't. Let's cut the bullshit train right there. No, he did not. Now, listen, am I claiming that Tom Aspinall maybe was not looking for a way out? That's not what I'm claiming. But when we're talking about this shit about, Ciryl Gane, ended up winning this by TKO, are you really stating that because you believe that Tom Aspinall 100% could have continued? Or are you stating that once again because you have a little bit of a bone to pick with Tom Aspinall? It seems a little bit like both.
I don't like that. A lot of people aren't going to like that. A lot of people are going to say, Joey, what are you talking about? Well, we're going to break down the entire fight in this very video because Tom Aspinall did quit. Tom Aspinall did verbally tap. A lot of people aren't going to want to hear that, but let's actually check something out real quick. Quit, the Webster's Dictionary, to give up, to leave, to depart. What did Tom Aspinall do? He could not continue, so he gave up. He left.
Right. And at the end of the day, if Tom Aspinall's vision was that compromised, especially against an opponent that is very, stocky and lengthy, appeared to be even a little bit more weight, a little bit more girthier than what he was. And I'm not sure if Ciryl Gane usually looks like that, because from what I've seen from him in the past, he looked about 10 to 15 pounds larger in this fight to me. I mean, I could be wrong about that. I think Tom Aspinall gained a little bit of weight as well. But I was a little bit surprised at how big Ciryl Gane looked in this fight. I mean, damn. But anyway, but the point overall is that once again, when we talk about Tom Aspinall giving up or quitting, yeah, you can say that he quit, but was it justified? I don't necessarily have a problem with a fighter quitting, and it's a no contest if I believe that it is somewhat justified. Now, are there certain fights overall to where I really thought that the fighter probably could have continued on and it was obvious that they were milking it, or they kind of did it so they could get the title, or ended up, being a no contest, or C, because they did not want to continue on because they were getting their ass whooped? Yes. Like when I took a look at Piotr Jan versus Aljamain Sterling, even though it was one hell of a knee, I mean, I thought Aljamain Sterling more than likely could have continued. Now, I can't say that 100% for sure because I'm not someone overall who's a doctor, but at the end of the day, just in my personal view, Sterling more than likely could have continued, just in my view. But he said, why the hell would I want to do that? Overall, I'm losing this fight. I'm getting my ass completely handed to me. And if I can end up getting the title like this, or this changed to a no contest, I'm going to, and then I can possibly perform better in the rematch. And that's exactly what happened. Piotr Jan was actually probably an all-around more skilled fighter than Aljamain Sterling. It's just that sometimes he can have these big, idiotic brain fart moments. Because that's not the only time where I've seen him do that. Piotr Jan has had multiple times where, for whatever reason, he has brain farts or brain lapses, and he'll either throw an illegal knee or illegal elbows or something of a sort. That's not the first time I've seen that out of him. So at the end of the day, Piotr Jan, not only did he lose the first fight for being an idiot, but then the second fight overall, he ends up being more of an idiot because either A, he ended up underestimating him, or Aljamain Sterling showed that he was a bit better than what he thought. And a lot of people, of course, stated that they thought Piotr Jan got robbed in that fight. He didn't get robbed in that fight. He blew it. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, overall, when we talk about this, eye injuries are a little bit, more tougher to talk about because even the slightest bit of pressure at times can make your eye, overall not suitable for a fight. And when you're in a competitive fight like this, and Cyril Gane is getting to you the way that he was getting to you in the first round, why would it be suitable to continue if you have blurry vision or we don't know how bad his eye was? So at the end of the day, I understand the points where people were saying, well, we've seen much worse eye pokes and blah, 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 right. And we've seen, punches on times land on fighters that did not seem 100% flush, compared to other punches. But then that punch may knock out that particular fighter, and then this other punch may not knock out that particular fighter. So everything is different. Every situation is different. I can't claim to you overall that, I'm a doctor or something like that. Now, that being stated, just in my view, did the eye poke look bad enough, as what Tom Aspinall was saying? Probably not, but at the end of the day, I'm not quite sure, But anyway, but we'll talk about that because I had some people in my comment section also stating, well, Tom Aspinall, he was looking for a way out because he's only a first round fighter. And, we'll get to that as well. I understand people's side, but, there's a reason why I'm not just jumping on that bandwagon as of yet.
He left the cage. He refused to continue fighting. Whether you believe that's warranted or not, we're going to get to that in a little bit. We're going to get to the double eye poke in a second. Also, verbal tap. When a fighter submits an MMA by verbally stating they quit or by a scream of pain, I take Tom Aspinall repeatedly saying to the doctor and referee, I can't see, even though Jason Herzog's like, shut the fuck up, Tom Aspinall. Take some time before you start screaming that because I don't want to have to stop the fight. He still continued to do it, and he did it after 1 minute after the eye poke. But let's break down the fight.
Once again, for people that don't really understand how people work, and I'm not trying to sound, pretentious or anything like that. But listen, I'm relatively young. I'm someone that is 27 years old. But anyone who knows how, how mankind works, especially when they're fanboys of certain people, they're on your side one day and then they're completely against you the next. Like, I believe that there was one comment in my recent comment section that was stating that it just surprises me how quickly some of these people, how they switch over. It doesn't really surprise me because I know how people work. And that's how fanboys are. That's how fanboys and fangirls are. Whether they turn on you because they were a fan of you and then you upset them and you did not live up to expectations, so then they have to kick you like a bad habit, overall, or, if they're defending, one of their guys that they're a major fan of. So at the end of the day, this is just, how people are, but just like with other fighters, like for example, Alexander Pereira, or Piera, however you want to pronounce it, Mr. Poatan, he ended up recently just defeating Magomed Ankalaev, but he was on top of the world there for a while until he ended up getting defeated by that of a Magomed Ankalaev within that of the first fight. And then take a look and see how many people turned on him. Even though Alex has never really done anything, at least from my point of view, from what I've seen, that really would turn people against him personally or in any bad way. All of a sudden, all these people were just coming out of the woodwork and claiming how overrated he was and blah, 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 and all sort of stuff. Then he wins the rematch, and now he's in everyone's good graces again. So I mean, it just is what it is. But that's how people are.
I'm going to pull up some images here for you guys to show you really how the fight went down, and then I'm going to give you a synopsis of the first 4.5 minutes before the double eye poke by Cyril Gahn. Here's some good images. Here's a nice jab from Cyril Gahn.
Excuse me. And Tom Aspinall is more than likely not going to get in the good graces of people until he rematches out of a Cyril Gahn, and he more than likely stops him, or at the very least has a dominant performance over him. Because the John Jones fans especially, but many other people who have been hearing all this stuff about how Tom Aspinall, how he would beat John Jones and John Jones was avoiding him, many people are now going to look at him and say, you proved to us that you're really not as good as what many people were claiming. So once again, Tom Aspinall is going to have to, once again, if he's going to get in the good graces with people or be looked at in the same aura, he is going to have to get in a rematch with Cyril Gahn, make some serious adjustments, and he is going to have to stop him.
Here's a nice right cross. Bloodied up Tom Aspinall badly in the first 30 seconds, which we'll get to in a second. And then we have the eye poke on a bloodied and battered Tom Aspinall. And then we have him holding the rag on his eye, which is actually controversial because this right here is Tom Aspinall's right eye, but the left eye got the worst of the poke. But we'll get to that. Okay.
It looked like it, but the reason why I claim overall, once again, why we can't just go off of that is because, especially with the eye, it's such a sensitive area that you can have a time to where someone basically gets a whole finger in their eye, and yeah, it's gonna hurt like hell, but it may not do as much damage as maybe someone that even taps the eye, because overall, it just may do something. It just has to hit it in the right way. So that's why I'm not just gonna jump on this bandwagon or say that Tom Aspinall completely gave up or he knew he was losing, so that's why he gave up. Because it's not like this was in, the fourth or the fifth round or something like that. This was in the first round. Now, who knows? Maybe Tom Aspinall, maybe he did quit because he believed that he could not win. But I'm not going to go that far once again. Because, to be honest with you, I do not know enough about Tom Aspinall because there really isn't enough, of a data sheet on him. And the reason why I claim that is because, many people are stating, well, Tom Aspinall, he's only really a first and second round fighter. That's the reason why he couldn't continue, overall. He was getting beat up in the first round, so he would have not won this fight. Well, we don't know that for sure. A lot of people, once again, they make assumptions, but do you really 100% know that for sure? We've never seen Tom Aspinall in a full 5-round fight. Actually, I believe in his whole entire career, he's never even made it to the third round. So the point is that what you're saying might be true, but until we see some actual evidence on that, we just don't know for sure. And oftentimes when certain people see someone that has a great amount of hype, either with certain jealousies or with a certain amount of jealousy or malice or whatever it may be, or just because, they're sticking up for their particular fighter or something like that, or because they just don't believe that they're as good as what many people say, they immediately try to tear them down or make assumptions about them without there even being 100% proof. Many people overall get very, very jealous. They get very vindictive when they see someone that is very, very highly touted, very early on, even though they're not quite as proven. And I understand that, but at the end of the day, I've seen this, excuse me, I've seen this repeatedly with fighters. I've seen it with Ilia Topuria. I've seen it with that, overall, I believe, of a Michael Chandler. That's why many of the fighters were pissed off at him, because he was a big name at Bellator and he was getting title shots very early. And I mean, to be fair, I do understand some of the reasons why some of those fighters were angry, because we've been here for a long time and, we have to earn our title shots. But Michael Chandler comes to the UFC, gets one win, and he ends up getting a title shot. Right, but there are exceptions for exceptional people, and Michael Chandler was one of the biggest names within that of Bellator MMA. So, of course, Dana White was going to shoot him up overall, to stardom. And certain fighters, of course, were getting a little bit pissed off, like Dustin Poirier, and I understand that. But to be quite honest with you, and Dustin Poirier is someone that he appears to be a decent guy, but he also has a little bit of that jealous energy, just in my personal view. You can tell overall that he does not like it when there are certain people that get opportunities overall because of their name or because of their hype around them. Because in Dustin Poirier's, mind, he's like, look, I had so many narratives about me in my career when I ended up losing, and I had to build myself from the ground up. Why did these guys get opportunities that I did not end up getting? Because I had to work my ass off in order to get these opportunities. And that's fair enough. But at the end of the day, Dustin Poirier, what he doesn't realize is that in the beginning of his career, he was not looked at as a guy overall that was on the star power of someone like a Michael Chandler or certain guys like that. Dustin Poirier was looked at as a very decent fighter, a good little contender that pretty much would get stopped or pretty much lose every big fight in his career. Very similar to that of a Charles Oliveira. So that's why Dustin Poirier was eventually going to have to prove himself, because to anyone that had really watched the early part of Dustin Poirier's career, he pretty much was known for losing every big fight that he was ever a part of. To Chan Sung Jung, and I believe to, who else did he lose to? He lost to Cub Swanson. He lost to a couple of other guys. He was still a very good fighter, but he did not become a great fighter, where he also would eventually later on be the recipient of greater opportunities when he would become a monster at the 155-pound weight class. But anyway.
And we'll get to that. It's a little bit of a gray area, but let's leave it on a nice image. Let's leave it on this image while I break down the fight. So before this entire debacle, which, let's be real, UFC 321 was a massive disappointment. It really was, guys. It really was a massive disappointment. Co-main event was kind of dog shit. Mario versus Umar was incredible. Jalton versus Volkov.
Was Mario versus Umar really incredible, or are you just saying that because you're trying to glaze another Dagestani? And don't get it twisted. I'm not claiming that fight was not good. I watched the fight. I thought it was good. Mario Batista got his fair share of licks in, but that fight pretty much was Umar Nurmagomedov grappling him and completely outworking him for a total of 3 rounds. So, to me, that fight was not absolutely amazing. It was a good little scrap. But pretty much, this is just my personal view of it. Pretty much anyone that truly knows UFC that was looking at this card knew that this was not going to be the best of cards. Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane was pretty much the only fight on this card that was majorly exciting. I think Umar Nurmagomedov versus Mario Batista, everyone knows that Mario Batista is never going to be a guy, at least not more than likely, not at this current state. He's not going to be a guy that is truly competing for the title. He ended up getting a very good win over Patchy Mix or Nix, whatever the fuck his name was, who pretty much has been shown to be a complete hype job within that of the UFC world, which is why people don't take any fight or some other promotion seriously, as they probably shouldn't. Because time and time again, fighters from that of Bellator or other promotions, they come in and they prove that they are not championship level material. Or Ben Askren or some of these other guys. Don't get it twisted, not every single time. And there's been many fighters that have come from other promotions or kickboxing or something like that, like Israel Adesanya or Alex Pereira, that have shown that they are elite level fighters. But to be quite honest with you, the majority of champions that are in the UFC, they're not from these other promotions where they were highly touted there, like Bellator or one of these other guys. They're from one of these smaller fight promotions that they find from across the world, and then they pretty much grab them from there, and then they get them to the UFC. There's been very little champions that I can remember that were actually very popular in Bellator or one of these other places, and they actually became a champion in the UFC, other than Fabricio Verdum and Eddie Alvarez. But when they were actually a part of Bellator, that was when the competition actually was still very good. But Bellator within the past several years, there's been almost nothing there.
It was an absolute disaster and an embarrassment to the sport. But we're going to do a full...
But talking about the other fights on this card, you had Alexander Rakic, I believe, versus that one Russian fighter. That was a pretty good fight, but of course it was very anticlimactic because Rakic basically got knocked out with a power jab from what it appeared. And then he curled up in a ball, and then he actually, how do you curl up in a ball and then you're going to protest a stoppage? That's what I want to know. And then overall, the next fight after that, I think it was, who was next after that? I can't remember who was after that, but there was Alexander Volkov versus, I believe, Almeida, which was a very anticlimactic fight in my view from what I had seen. Now I'd have to rewatch it, but it appeared like Almeida won to me. But Almeida does not have the most fan-friendly style. He's not big amongst, MMA fans. And Volkov is someone who's very good, but he's not someone that, is ever going to be, king of the world, in my view. But anyway.
Card post-fight. Be on the lookout for a full dedicated UFC 321 or UFC 321 post-fight. We'll do a video on every fight on the card.
And then talking about the other 2 fights, Mackenzie Dern versus that one Brazilian chick. Come on, give it a rest. No one was super excited about that. You even had one of the commentators, I believe, stating right before this fight that, is there a more insignificant title fight in history? And Umar Nurmagomedov versus Mario Batista was a fight against an elite fighter, against, a fighter that is a very good, hard worker, and he's someone that's relatively skilled. But he got a win over someone that he wasn't expected to, and then he got pushed in a position that he never really belonged in the first place. That's pretty much what this whole card was. The only fight that truly was great on here, the only 2 fights that really were truly great on here, in my personal view, were that of Alexander Rakic versus that one Russian fighter or wherever he's from, and Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane. So this whole card really was, from the get-go, it really was not that good. But the ending of it made it so much worse.
This is really about the main event. This main event was very, very disappointing because it had an anticlimactic ending. And I know people are going to say this is biased. I was disappointed by the ending, 100%. But I got to be honest, I saw all I needed to see. I really did, because in this fight, Cyril Gane came out within the first 30 seconds, looked super impressive, clipped Tom Aspinall with a nasty left hook, touched up his nose, bloodied up his nose, maybe broke his nose. I'm not sure about that. It was like first 30 seconds, maybe even 20 seconds in. Picture perfect left hook. Gane's being a little bit aggressive, and then he starts backing up a little bit, pumping the jab. Aspinall lands a couple low kicks. And it's really Aspinall lunging in. A couple right hands get close, but Gane's moving out of the way. And Gane is making Aspinall punch, swing, and punch air. Again, he landed a couple low kicks, but it's like I'm watching this fight, and Gane's touching him up. And as you...
He definitely was. But the reason why I can't just go on this narrative of saying that, see, I've seen all I needed to see, is because this was only the first round. I cannot judge a fighter only off of one round. And it's not like this round overall was like when Conor McGregor was like beating the shit out of Eddie Alvarez or something. This was, still a very competitive round. It was one where Cyril Gane was winning, of course, in my view, but it's not like Tom Aspinall was just, getting completely, just demolished in there. He was losing, and he was clearly, on the recipient of more dominant strikes being thrown at him than vice versa. But he still got his fair share of shots in there. He still, was able to get a couple of jabs, a couple of lefts, a couple of good rights, a couple of good low kicks, with the front leg. So, I mean, it is what it is. But the rematch is going to be very interesting because we still do not know a whole lot about Tom Aspinall. I don't know if he can fight a full 5 rounds. I don't know if he can beat someone like a Cyril Gane. I don't know overall certain things about what he can do. What adjustments can he make? Will he freeze under the bright lights against a fighter that can actually give him a great fight? The reason why it's so hard to really predict all these is because we don't know enough about Tom Aspinall yet. Because basically in every fight of his career, within that of the UFC, and not even just within the UFC, whether he's won or lost, it's always been within the first couple of rounds. So we do not know what is going to aspire or what's going to transpire in a full 5-round fight. So that's why I'm not going to rush to either side to just say that Tom Aspinall is for sure going to beat Gane or that Gane is for sure going to beat Aspinall, because there are still certain questions that need to be answered. And we will not know until the rematch, of course, is set up.
Guys know, I've been telling you guys for months, if not damn near a year, that Gane is criminally underrated and Aspinall is criminally overrated. We'll get to that. We're going to get to that.
Right, but how would Gane be criminally underrated? There's no offense against Gane. He's a very good fighter. He's someone that is a legit A-grade level fighter. But let's be real. Let's take a look at the both of their careers. And I understand that certain people, like I had certain people in my comment section say that, well, this is what happens when you finally don't fight, these shorter, fat guys, overall. And all that's understandable. But at least Tom Aspinall has a win over someone like that of a Sergey Pavlovich, or whatever that dude's name was, where he actually was very good and someone that was the possible favorite in that fight. I don't even know if Cyril Gane has a win like that in his career. And in his last fight against Alexander Volkov, many people don't even believe that he won that fight. Now, I'd have to watch it for myself, but, overall from what I had seen, he definitely was having a lot of problems in that fight. But the point is that no offense against Gane, but pretty much every time that he's been in a true 50-50 fight, or a fight to where, he was expected to possibly be, have something on the line and possibly win the belt, or be in the ring against a fighter that could truly challenge him, he's pretty much lost. He really didn't look that good against Alexander Volkov in the rematch, where Volkov has finally made some adjustments and became a true top 3 contender. He got absolutely embarrassed against John Jones, where he got submitted within the first round, I believe, and basically was completely molested in that fight, if we're going to be real with you. John Jones basically had his way with him. He showed no ounce of ground game whatsoever, and then, of course, in the Francis Ngannou fight, he did not do anywhere near enough in order to win that fight, although it was slightly competitive. So no offense against Gane, but what really are the biggest wins of his career? Alexander Volkov probably, and many people don't even believe that he won that second fight. So then when we take a look at the other wins of his career, it probably includes guys like Derek Lewis and Tai Tuivasa and older JDS, and certain guys like that. Like, who has he really beat? is no offense. He doesn't have a Sergey Pavlovich on his record. He doesn't have, a Stipe Miocic or anything like that. He doesn't have any of those guys. So, I mean, it just is what it is.
Anyway, Gans using his footwork. He's pressuring when he needs to. He's backing up when he needs to. He's pumping the jab. Aspinall lands a couple shots. Maybe. Really, it was like two hard low kicks. I remember one time Cyril Gane switched stances, and then Aspinall chopped the leg, and then Gane switched right back after that. But outside of that, maybe like a kick or two to the body. But it seemed like Gane was parrying or blocking most of it, and Gane was touching him up on the feet. And then you get to the ending. We got about 30 seconds left. It's clear Gane is winning. At the 2-minute and 42-second mark, Tom Aspinall is looking up at the clock. Go back if you don't believe me. Tom Aspinall is bloodied, battered, breathing out of his mouth hard, looking up at the clock. Not even a halfway through the first round. And then with 30 seconds to go, Gane throws a head kick that does not land. It's blocked. Tom threw a head kick. By the way, Tom threw a head kick in the first round that partially maybe got through the guard. And also, it seemed like once Gane started getting touched up, he started getting a little bit more desperate. And he was like wading in, throwing like combinations that weren't coming close to landing, and even threw a spinning back kick to the body. But with 30 seconds to go, Gane throws a head kick, pulls out with one of his hands.
What I will say about Tom Aspinall is this, and I remember him doing a couple of spinning things. Like I believe at one point in time, he did a spinning back kick, I believe, or kind of a spinning heel kick to that of the hip, which I believe actually landed, but it's just a very awkward kick to kind of throw at that moment. And I think that was Tom Aspinall's way of kind of admitting that I'm having a little bit of a problem with this guy and I'm still trying to figure him out. But it looks lighthearted at the moment, But anyways, he tried a couple of other things. He tried this one spinning thing, but, that was kind of Tom Aspinall's way, in my view, of saying that I'm still trying to figure this guy out. But there wasn't really a look on Tom Aspinall's face, in my personal view, that was like, I can't get out of this. Now, of course, that's judging on something that I don't completely know about. I'm not in his mind. But at the end of the day, once again, just in my personal view, I think that there would have been a chance that Tom Aspinall could have came back and won. I still would have predicted Tom Aspinall to probably win. But you never know. He could have been too tired. The bloody nose, of course, could have been a factor. You just never know.
And double eye pokes Tom Aspinall. Aspinall immediately turns away. There's a break in the action. And to be honest, live, the eye pokes didn't even look that bad. Upon replay, they looked a lot worse. And Aspinall immediately starts telling Jason Herzog, I can't see, within like 1 minute. It's not even 1 minute. He's like, I can't see. Herzog's like, oh, shut up, shut your mouth. I mean, Herzog didn't actually say that, but that's basically what Herzog's saying. He's like, here, put this on your eye, take your time. You have 5 minutes. He brings the doctor in. The doctor looks at him for a second, and he's like, listen, we want to give him time, but just take a look at him real quick. He's going to give you more time. The doctor kind of takes a half-assed look at it. He's like, I don't have any concerns. We just got to give him time to recover, and, I don't have any concerns about the eye. And Tom proceeds to say, I can't see. I can't see. Even not giving it any real time, Herzog at that point basically walks away with the doctors, and he's like, look, I don't want to ask him any questions. I want to give him time because I don't want to lead down a path. Basically, Herzog was saying, I don't want to give Tom Aspinall that out. I don't want him saying I can't see. I want to give him time to recover rather than him just shrieking out, I can't see, and then having to stop a title fight, of a main event title fight of the pay-per-view. That's what Herzog was saying. Well, eventually, time is up. The referee's like, can you see? Can you not see? Tom Aspinall's like, I can't see. He's literally holding the rag over it. Okay? He's holding the rag over it. We'll actually move it over to that image. Over the right eye, just like that. Completely scrunched up on the eye. He says, I can't see. Never even really tries to pull it away or look. And granted, maybe he knows. Maybe his eye hurt so bad he couldn't open it. He's saying, I can't see. He's literally holding the rag into it, saying, I cannot see. I cannot see. Never even...
Right, but let's not sit here and act like Tom Aspinall did not try to open his eye a couple of times. Now, if you want to claim overall that, he didn't try enough, that's up to you. But he did try to open his eye a couple of times, and he repeatedly stated that I cannot see.
Gave it an opportunity, never even tried at all. And then they call off the fight. Now, what is particularly, I don't know, maybe a bit of a conspiracy about this fight? I don't know. I'm going to give you my opinion in a second. When you look back at the eye poke, his left eye actually got it worse than his right eye, which is the eye that basically caused the stoppage. And a lot of people are saying, like, hold on, what the hell? He got brutally eye poked in the left eye, but he's holding the right eye. Well, what happened is, even though the fingers were over top Tom Aspinall's eyelids. They didn't actually go in the eye. He was poked from the outside over top the eyelids. The initial right eye poke wasn't bad. It was like a grazing shot. But then Gon tried to like push away, and as he pushed away, it was a little bit of a deeper poke than initially you looked.
And I'm not gonna claim that Gon overall that he completely did that on purpose, but like, dude, come on, like, because when I took a look at that replay, like, the guy looked like he almost purposely tried to dig into his eyes. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, pushing out with your fingers is one thing, and I mean, you're already kind of not supposed to do that in the UFC, at least if it affects someone's eyes. But he was already kind of doing that a couple of times, so there was always a risk for that. Gon apparently is someone that has a Muay Thai background, but he almost fights in a very taekwondo slash karate, type of style. Like, he reminds me a lot of Lyoto Machida when Lyoto Machida used to fight. For those of you that remember, Machida would kind of bounce on his feet, kind of move around, use distance, use 1-2s, and then of course he would throw that leg in order to keep them from getting to him or attack. He would stick that left hand in their face in order to push off of them so he could regain balance and an established distance, which is fine, but you have to make sure that you're not poking people in the eye. So either close your fingers or do something overall, like I said.
Look at for the right eye. So I hope that all makes sense. So there's no doubt about it. There was eye pokes here. The left eye was completely fine. He never had any trouble with it. The right eye apparently was so bad he could not continue. And I do believe there is a chance that Tom Aspinall has a serious eye injury out of this. I got a sneaking suspicion it's not going to be. If he has the detached retina, fair play to him. He should not continue then. But if he does not, this is the worst possible outcome for Tom Aspinall.
I will state this, especially after all the hoopla, especially about the John Jones situation, and you're in the biggest fight of your career, and this ends up happening, it does appear to most people that you ended up quitting, because it did not appear like an eye poke, especially if the medical report comes out that you overall, once again, it didn't really do any serious damage. A lot of people are going to take a look at you as a quitter and someone that is soft. Now, whether that's just or unjust, that's kind of up to you. But at the end, I'm not going to call him anything because, like I stated, I don't know overall how badly hurt his eye was, and the eye is an especially hard place to judge because you just never know. It's an extremely sensitive area, and even the lightest tap at times can be, something that can be a little bit damaging. Or I'm not going to say the lightest of taps, but, when you're in an MMA fight and it touches at least that hard as what a Gon did, and both fingers kind of dig into the eyes, even if they were with the eyes closed, it can still do damage or hurt it.
And the fact that after 14 months, after sitting on the sidelines, not his fault, he got fucked by the UFC. He comes out, gets outclassed by Gon for 4.5 minutes. He's bloodied, he's battered, he's breathing out of his mouth. And then he gets eye poked and says, I can't go. It's a bad look, and especially considering the fact.
I do agree that it is very much a bad look. And Tom Aspinall in that rematch, he better be prepared, and he better be prepared overall to stop that of a Gon, because people are going to be taking a look at that fight with wide open eyes.
He's saying it long before he's even tried to recover. He's screaming it long before he's even tried to recover. And then maybe this is a delay, but then there's reports Tom Aspinall went to the hospital, and then you have John Anik in DC 5 minutes later, maybe even 15 minutes later, saying, oh, Tom Aspinall's walking by us right now. Now, maybe that was a delay on the broadcast, but very, very odd, okay? But the real problem here is, for Tom Aspinall at least, is Gon was touching him up. Gon was whooping him prior to the...
Well, Gon was winning the fight. Tom Aspinall was having his moments, but it was clear that Gon, that he was clearly winning this fight and that he was getting the better of that of a Tom Aspinall. And now we kind of talk about Tom Aspinall and his all-around game. Tom Aspinall, in my view, is a very, very talented fighter. He's someone that, of course, is extremely great as an athlete. He's someone that's all-around greatly skilled as well. But he's not someone that is flawless in his style. He's someone that needs to move his head off the center line to a much greater degree. He has head movement, but he's kind of credited with, more of up and down movement and changing levels. He also needs to throw a lot more feints than what he did within this fight. He needs to throw a lot more low kicks because that is going to be the way that you beat a fighter like a Ciryl Gane, who pretty much almost fights like in a taekwondo type of style that likes to move around the ring and use their legs and is very tall and lengthy. You need to use that to your advantage. You know, kind of like what Alex Pereira ends up doing to a lot of his opponents. That's what Tom Aspinall is going to have to do. Also, keep your hands up consistently. Tom Aspinall, although to be fair, I cannot remember if he's not someone that keeps his hands up as consistently as what he needs to. And he was combined with the fact that he does not move his head off the center line as well as what he needs to. He was getting pieced up in this fight.
Stoppage. And I told you guys, going into this fight, Tom Aspinall was one of the most overrated fighters in UFC history, and Gane was being massively overlooked for no reason. And even if you want...
Well, it's not really that Gane was being overlooked for no reason. At the end of the day, Ciryl Gane, pretty much anyone that was going into this fight knew that, of course, that Ciryl Gane had the best chance to beat Aspinall out of anybody else. But, I mean, come on. John Jones moves up his first time to heavyweight. Although John, you could debate, is somewhat more of a heavyweight than what he is a natural light heavyweight, at least for his era. Now, to be fair, I do think that John is, probably the same size as guys like Pereira and Yuri Prochazka. But when John Jones was more around, he really was kind of more in a generation that today would be more middleweights, just in my personal view. But he still was a great fighter, no doubt. Still an all-time great level fighter. But that being stated, overall, you get submitted by John Jones within, 4 minutes? Like, give me a fucking break. Then you lose to Francis Ngannou, and people don't even believe that you beat Volkov, and you're getting out-grappled by Alexander Volkov? Give me a fucking break.
To say, and I think there's a fair case to be made. Aspinall got eye poked. He could not continue. It wasn't worth continuing because then maybe he gets TKO'd, and it's even worse for Aspinall.
Absolutely, especially if his eye is compromised. You don't overall continue a fight if your eye is even compromised because overall Ciryl Gane is someone that was piecing you up to a certain degree, not as dominantly as what I've ever seen, but still overall he was winning that first round. He was giving you a lot of problems, and he's someone that's very tall and lengthy and quick. You cannot play around with that.
But in my opinion, I saw all I needed to see. I really did.
Right, sir, but I'm not going, just in my personal view, I'm not going to go overall that far. And usually people that take a look at one round and say, you know what, I've seen all what I needed to see, they're usually haters, or they're usually fanboys, or they're people trying to prove a point. I cannot go off of something, and MMA JOEY might be completely right. Tom Aspinall may end up losing to Ciryl Gane in a rematch. I wouldn't be surprised after taking a look at this if Gane ended up winning. I still would probably favor Tom Aspinall. But that being stated, overall, I can't just base Tom Aspinall, his whole entire skill set and everything off of one round that I've seen. It could have been a bad performance. We do not know how he is over a course of 4 or 5 rounds. We do not know, once again, what adjustments he would have made. So we'll see.
Ciryl Gane was going to win this fight. Ciryl Gane was tagging him on the feet. Aspinall was getting tired. Aspinall's not used to getting out of the first minute, let alone getting out of the first round with a nose bloodied and battered against an elite level kickboxer. Oh, by the way, I can't believe I forgot this. Tom Aspinall shot one takedown the first round, got easily shucked off. Horrible shot, ugly shot. Ciryl Gane was...
Yes, he did. Tom Aspinall definitely was showing a little bit of desperation. There's no doubt about that. He's going to have to mix up his game very, very well. To be quite honest with you, Tom Aspinall kind of looked like a fighter in here that did not expect Ciryl Gane to be anywhere near this good. I think that he thought that, Ciryl Gane was pretty much going to get stopped or easily hit like a lot of the other fighters, and he figured out what Ciryl Gane was actually doing and how well he was timing him, and he said, wow, like this guy's a lot better, or he's a lot better prepared than what I thought he was going to be, which is why, once again, the rematch should be very exciting.
Faster, more athletic, stuffed it with ease. So he can't take Gane down. He's getting busted up on the feet. By the way, Gane also landing...
But once again, I can't just state overall that Gane would have for sure won this fight. Who do I believe would have won the fight? I think it could have went either way. I still probably would have bet on Tom Aspinall, but after taking a look at sometimes how ill-prepared Tom Aspinall was, it could have very easily went to Ciryl Gane as well. Because sometimes that just ends up happening. The fighter underestimates the fighter to a certain degree, or they don't expect them to be as well prepared as what they were, and it's just not the right night for them. That being stated, the real question is how is the rematch going to look? What adjustments can Tom Aspinall make? And will Ciryl Gane look just as good in the rematch? We'll have to see. But I cannot base the whole thing off of that. And the reason why that is because, once again, overall, we do not know how Tom Aspinall will look over 5 rounds. So like I said, we'll see. Like that's like me taking a look at the fight against Alex Pereira, and Khalil Roundtree, and if that fight would have ended within the first round, because Khalil was, kind of outboxing and outdoing Alex Pereira, and saying overall that, well, you know what, I have everything that I need. He was going to beat Alex Pereira, but you never know over the course of a 5 round fight, especially with two people that have knockout power and a high level of skill.
Good oblique kicks as well. Landed a couple good oblique kicks, pumping that jab, lands that left hook. And then it's like, okay, it looks like you're going to get out of the first round for the first time in ages. You've been going like 60 seconds. He gets eye poked. He's probably thinking, you know what? My eye's a little bit compromised now. I'm getting beat up. I can't breathe because my cardio is dog shit, which I predicted for a long time. Why continue?
Well, I cannot necessarily 100% say that Tom Aspinall's cardio is dog shit. And the reason why I can't say that is because I've never seen him in a 5 round fight. His cardio looks decent to me from what I have seen, but the problem is that I just can't base it off of anything, because how can I base your cardio off of anything when you're basically knocking everybody out within the first, few minutes? I don't know how good your cardio actually is. So, I mean, a lot of people, of course, are saying that, oh, Tom Aspinall, that his stamina is just awful and all sort of stuff. But, I mean, just in my personal view, I don't know how good or how, not good it actually is, because we don't really have any samples of it.
When I can live to fight another day, because make no mistake about it, the rematch needs to happen. We need to get Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gahn. But I don't want this to be a total shit on Tom Aspinall fest. I'm just giving you my honest opinion.
Yeah, you kind of do, but it is what it is.
And I do feel bad for Tom Aspinall a bit. The UFC, make no mistake about it, the UFC and John Jones fucked Tom Aspinall. But, and as this tweet actually says, I tweeted out these...
And to let John Jones hold on to the title for that fucking long without fighting was just absolutely ridiculous. And I understand overall that there are exceptions for exceptional people, or you have your favorites, all that, I get it. Especially the people that make you the most amount of money, like Conor McGregor and John Jones. But come on, man. Like, Tom Aspinall was the interim champion for, like, over a fucking year. Like, apparently there was a rule to where you have to defend your title at least once a year or something like that. And John Jones really has been allowed to break every fucking rule within MMA. The man has been caught on steroids, like, I don't know how many fucking times. There was one time where he even got caught with steroids and he was still allowed to fight. Remember that? He had the pictogram or something like that, and he was still allowed to fight. The man has ran over, or he's hit pregnant women with his car. Apparently he has assault charges. Now, to be fair, I would have to look into that case. I don't know if he actually did beat up that woman or what, but this man, no offense against John Jones, but he's kind of a piece of shit. It's no offense. Great fighter, but that man overall, he's not a good human being.
Images here. As this tweet actually says, Aspinall got elevated off of John Jones not wanting to fight a no-name, unproven heavyweight who got a free title shot with a win over Marcin Tybura. I know a lot of people are going to be triggered by this. This is true.
Well, let me rewind this.
Of John Jones not wanting to fight a no-name, unproven heavyweight who got a free title shot with a win over Marcin Tybura. These images here. I do feel bad for Tom Aspinall a bit. The UFC, make no mistake about it, the UFC and John Jones fucked Tom Aspinall. But, and as this tweet actually says, I tweeted out these images here. As this tweet actually says, Aspinall got elevated off of John Jones not wanting to fight a no-name, unproven heavyweight who got a free title shot with a win over Marcin Tybura. I know a lot of people...
What the hell are you talking about, dude? Like, Tom Aspinall literally got the biggest win at the time in the heavyweight division when he was able to beat Sergey Pavlovich. Like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? And then on top of that, he beat multiple other contenders like Alexander Volkov. He beat Andrei Arlovsky like years ago, and then, of course, when Andrei was basically an ancient relic. But I mean, still, it is what it is. And then, of course, he also beat Curtis Blaze. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like, please name me a win in Cyril Gahn's career that is bigger than that Sergey Pavlovich win that Tom Aspinall has. This guy is literally, he has the goal to try to sit here and act like the biggest win in Tom Aspinall's career when they were calling for that fight was Marcin Tybura, or whatever that one fighter's name is. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, just stop, dude.
People are going to be triggered by this. This is true. This is true.
It's not true at all. Because by the time that people were calling for the Tom Aspinall and John Jones fight, that was not even the same conversation anymore until he beat that of a Sergey Pavlovich. The reason why it wasn't even a conversation at the time is because no one knew how good Tom Aspinall was going to be after he had that one leg surgery and that one accident against Curtis Blades, that one freak accident. So come on, dude. Like, what are you talking about?
Aspinall was elevated off of the fact that John Jones had no desire to fight him
Yes, he was avoiding him. It is what it is. He was ducking the shit out of him. It's obvious.
because the risk versus reward was not worth it for John Jones. If he beats Tom Aspinall, it's no different than when he beat Cyril Gane. Everyone acted like Cyril Gane was the next.
No, actually, that's not the case at all. Because everyone overall could see that Tom Aspinall, at least with the streak, whether he beats Cyril Gane or not, taking a look at this at the end of the day, Cyril Gane does not have a win in his career like that of Sergey Pavlovich. And Tom Aspinall was stopping everyone within the first couple of rounds. Cyril Gane had lost to Francis Ngannou. He really probably should have lost that last fight against Volkov. And then he gets completely embarrassed against John Jones. No, it's not the same thing at all.
Big thing, next best thing. He was the new breed of heavyweight. Jones goes out there and beats him in 2 minutes.
At least it wasn't at that time. Now, if Cyril Gane does beat Tom Aspinall, then of course we can claim that. But not until.
Everyone acts like that's not a good win. Aspinall has crazy different than when he beat Cyril Gane. Everyone acted like Cyril Gane was the next big thing, next best thing. He was the new breed of heavyweight. Jones goes out there and beats him in 2 minutes, and everyone acts like that's not a good win.
It's a great win, but Cyril Gane has still proven to this day that he is not a true champion. It just is what it is.
Aspinall has crazy athleticism and knockout power. While I believe personally Jones is far more skilled and would win that fight, there's a chance, man. Jones is getting old, so why take that fight necessarily?
Well, John Jones also knew what he was looking at. Tom Aspinall is someone that still is extremely skilled as well. Now, does he have more faults in his style that his fan base is probably, does not see or is, less willing to admit? Sure. But John Jones knew that was going to be one hell of a fight. Because Tom Aspinall was someone that could compete in terms of his size, extremely fast, extremely strong, someone that has great grappling, so I don't really know who would have won that fight either. I think John Jones probably is the more all-around skilled fighter, but, it still would have been a great fight, but we'll never know because John Jones was not willing to fight him.
Early against a guy with a name that's not that big. You've already cemented your legacy. Now, I believe it should have been relinquished far earlier. The UFC should have not strung Tom Aspinall along. But now you have a Tom Aspinall that returns after a 14-month layoff that's not self-induced. And now the narrative is going to be Tom Aspinall quit. So
The narrative will be that he quit, at least to a lot of people, especially hearing all this, narrative about how John Jones avoided him and blah, 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 and all this other stuff. Tom Aspinall overall will have to recover that aura once again by knocking out Cyril Gane or stopping him in the rematch. But we'll see.
Out. Gets outclassed by Gane for 4.5 minutes. He's bloodied. He's battered. He's breathing out of his mouth. And then he gets eye poked and says, I can't go. It's a bad look, and especially considering the fact he's saying it long before he's even tried to recover. He's screaming it long before he's even tried to recover. And then maybe this is a delay, but then there's reports Tom Aspinall went to the hospital. And then you have John Anik in D.C. 5 minutes later, maybe even 15 minutes later, saying, oh, Tom Aspinall's walking by us right now. Now, maybe that was a delay on the broadcast, but very, very odd, okay? But the real problem here is, for Tom Aspinall at least, is Gane was touching him up. Gane was whooping him prior to the stoppage. And I told you guys, going into this fight, Tom Aspinall was one of the most overrated fighters in UFC history, and Gane was being massively overlooked for no reason. And even if you want to say, and I think there's a fair case to be made, Aspinall got eye poked, he could not continue. It wasn't worth continuing because then maybe he gets TKO'd and it's even worse for Aspinall. But in my opinion, I saw all I needed to see. I really did. He's probably thinking, you know what? My eye's a little bit compromised now. I'm getting beat up. I can't breathe because my cardio is dog shit, which I predicted for a long time. Why continue when I can live to fight another day? Because make no mistake about it, the rematch needs to happen. We need to get Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane. But I don't want this to be a total shit on Tom Aspinall fest. I'm just giving you my honest opinion. I do feel bad for Tom Aspinall a bit. The UFC, make no mistake about it, the UFC and John Jones fucked Tom Aspinall. But, and as this tweet actually says, I tweeted out these images, Arsene Tybora. I know a lot of people are going to be triggered by this. This is true. This is true. Tom Aspinall was elevated off of the fact that John Jones had no desire to fight him because the risk versus reward was not worth it for John Jones.
Yes, like I said, and once again, I apologize. It rewinded there for a minute. I had to delete some storage, excuse me, in order to make the rest of this video. But anyways, that being stated overall, once again, it was clear that John Jones did not want to fight him because he knew that Tom Aspinall was going to be a humongous threat.
If he beats Tom Aspinall, it's no different than when he beat Cyril Gane. Everyone acted like Cyril Gane was the next big thing.
Well, if that was the case, then why not fight Tom Aspinall? Because Tom Aspinall is someone overall that, if he's no different than Cyril Gane, then why are you asking for the biggest, highest payday? It makes no fucking sense. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not claiming that at certain times when a fighter overall, once again, when they refuse a fight because they say, listen, you're not very well known, and then on top of that, you're highly, highly skilled. So it just would not be worth it for me, because if I end up beating you, it's going to be the same if I end up beating a certain amount of these other guys. That's fine. But, like I remember for years people were saying, why won't Canelo fight Andrade? Well, the reason why Andrade was so hard to fight for a lot of people is because he was highly skilled. He was someone that was dangerous and big. And then on top of that, he just wasn't very well known unless you were a hardcore boxing fan or someone that had been watching it. So, I mean, the point overall is why fight Demetrius Andrade when you can possibly fight somebody else, overall, and you're going to get the same amount of recognition or the same amount of star power. And Andrade is someone that could potentially beat you. It just wouldn't make any sense.
Best thing. He was the new rated heavyweight. Jones goes out there and beats him.
Excuse me. But in terms of Tom Aspinall, it was not the same situation. Because Aspinall at that time did have somewhat of star power, and it was looked at as potentially the biggest fight that the UFC could have made. John Jones was not interested.
2 minutes, and everyone acts like that's not a good win. Aspinall has crazy athleticism and knockout power. While I believe personally Jones is far more skilled and would win that fight, there's a chance, man. Jones is getting old. So why take that fight necessarily against a guy with a name that's not that big? You've already cemented your legacy. Now, I believe it should have been relinquished far earlier. The UFC should have not strung Tom Aspinall along. But now you have a Tom Aspinall.
And basically the reason why that was is so John Jones could have, I believe, the most amount of days in heavyweight history. But no one is really going to take a look at his reign and take it that seriously. The win over Cyril Gane, of course, was a great win. Now, if Gane, of course, ends up defeating Aspinall, people are going to take a look at it way differently. But let's say Tom Aspinall ends up defeating Gane within that of the rematch. Pretty much all John Jones has to say for himself at heavyweight is that I beat Cyril Gane, a guy who was a very great contender, but never the official champion of the UFC. And then on top of that, I ended up defeating a Stipe Miocic, who, of course, on the surface is the greatest MMA, heavyweight of all time. But I fought him on a 3.5 years layoff, and on top of that, when he suffered a knockout loss in his last fight and then was deranked all the way to the 7th contender. Like, give me a fucking break.
That returns after a 14-month layoff that's not self-induced. And now the narrative is going to be Tom Aspinall quit.
It'll be that Tom Aspinall quit, especially if he cannot beat Cyril Gane within that of the rematch. But if Cyril Gane can stop him within, the 2 rounds overall, or if he can somehow do that, then, people are more than likely going to be on his side again. And it's going to overall leave a whole lot of the people like MMA JOEY at least a little bit more silent. But that rematch is going to be very important for Tom Aspinall's career. He has to win that fight.
Do feel bad for him, but at the end of the day, I'm being dead serious. And I know people are going to say it's some type of bias for me that, I don't like Tom Aspinall. I have nothing against Tom Aspinall. I believe that he was criminally overrated, and I thought this fight was a 50-50 fight. I leaned Cyril Gane the entire lead up of this fight, and then I said, you know what? I don't trust Gane in big moments. He chokes in big moments, so I'm going to pick Aspinall. But if it goes past the round, if it goes past 2 rounds, I think Cyril Gane is a lock. And in my opinion, the way this fight was looking...
Like I said, excuse me, I have not watched Tom Aspinall's fights as much in depth, probably as what I needed to, but from what I've seen, it's just too hard to tell whether Tom Aspinall is not going to have good stamina or enough or not after the first 2 rounds. I think that many people predict that a fighter, just because they're getting stoppage wins within the first couple of rounds, that they automatically don't have good stamina. But not every fighter is a Francis Ngannou when they fought Stipe, and not every fighter is a Conor McGregor.
I really do believe I saw all I needed to see. Gane was going to win this fight unless he got completely gassed out somehow. But we've seen Gane go...
Which Gane also, has moments of doing. He's not someone that has the best gas tank either.
5 rounds many times. We've never seen Tom Aspinall go 5 rounds. I don't think he's ever been to a 4th or 5th round ever in his...
Right, which is why, once again, I cannot just completely judge his gas tank off of that.
Entire career ever. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but definitely not in the UFC. And I'm seeing him lunging in, getting slower and slower in the first round, getting busted up, having trouble breathing out of his nose, eating body jabs as well. I'm forgetting half the first round. There was oblique kicks. There was body jabs. There was jabs that was busted up his nose. There was the left hand to the nose that started it all off. Gane was flowing well and dodging a lot of the big shots at Tom Aspinall, and that energy is only going to be sapped. Ciryl Gane has never been KO'd. You know, going into this fight, everyone's just like, well, Ciryl Gane got dropped by Tai Tuivasa. He got dropped by Tai Tuivasa. I mean, what does that really mean?
Right, but I don't take a look at just one opponent overall getting dropped or having a bad performance over one fighter and say, oh, wow, that's all the evidence that I need. Which is why many people overall, when they analyze a fight, they don't really know what they're doing when they're analyzing a fight overall, because they'll take a look at one factor and just completely base it off of that one fight or that one factor. Like, I remember when Naoya Inoue, when he fought Nonito Donaire in that first match, and everyone was saying that, oh, well, this is proof that Inoue can't do anything against a Steven Fulton. And, you know, that could be proof. Maybe Inoue will keep those same faults. Or perhaps it was a bad performance of the wrong type of style. Or B, you know, maybe Inoue overall did not take him as seriously as what he should have in the first fight, which I think was very clear. Because especially in the rematch, Inoue was a lot better, and he stopped, you know, Donaire within 2 rounds. But that being stated overall, you know, like I said, I cannot completely base it off of that. But Ciryl Gane is someone that has shown clear faults not only against John Jones, but also Francis Ngannou and Alexander Volkov and in other fights as well. So it was, you know, there was an obvious favorite here. But that being stated, the rematch is going to be a lot more close in terms of the odds. So Tom Aspinall is going to have to really show out in this fight, or he is going to be remembered, if he loses this fight, probably as one of the biggest fraud checks in UFC history, at least for, you know, the narrative that was surrounding him and the hype that was surrounding him. He's going to be known as one of the biggest, you know, hype jobs, you know, overall in the UFC's history.
It was years ago, and what happened to Tai Tuivasa after that? He got his ass whooped, and he was getting dog walked before that. So I really think this is a cautionary tale where people were really overhyping Tom Aspinall, and he really wasn't that good. The heavyweight division is dog shit. So Tom Aspinall...
I agree. The heavyweight division is really not that good right now. Other than Tom Aspinall and Ciryl Gane and maybe Alexander Volkov, there's really no one else there that I would really call great. You know, you have, I mean, Curtis Blades, who's okay. You have Tai Tuivasa and Derek Lewis, those lard asses that will never make anything of themselves, not on the championship level. There's just no one else there to compete with Tom Aspinall or Ciryl Gane.
Is one of the best heavyweights in the world. But when you got Volkov, you got bums like Jalton Almeida, you got Chris Barnett, you got Hamdi Abdelwahab, you got guys like that, you got Marcin Tybura. When a division looks like that, it's not hard to be one of the best in the heavyweight division.
Well, I agree, but, you know, you're talking about Tom Aspinall. Ciryl Gane has been the one overall that has fought probably even more bums than Tom Aspinall. He doesn't have, once again, he does not have a win in his career like that overall of a Sergey Pavlovich. So once again, what are we really talking about here, dude? Like, this guy's trying to act like Tom Aspinall, that he just beat the shit out of, you know, Tybura, or whatever the fuck his name is, however you pronounce it, Tybura, however you want to pronounce it, you know, and then people are just calling for the John Jones fight. Like, dude, that's not what happened at all.
But Tom was almost elevated by the fan base to this GOAT-like status, this God-like status, solely because Jones wasn't keen on fighting him.
I do slightly agree with that, and that's why we always have to be very, very careful. You know, you have to be very careful with ranking a certain fighter or a certain athlete or someone or somebody in a certain realm to where we don't know if they belong in there yet.
He's 1-1 with Curtis Blades. And in that fight, what happened? He got a little bit hard, suffered a little bit of an injury, and could not continue. Just shelled up, curled up, went like this, and could not continue. Did not try to fight. I'm not saying he definitely should have tried to fight with this eye poke, but it wasn't a good look, man. Immediately telling the ref, I can't see, is what really did it for me. If Tom would have looked like he was going to continue, he's wiping out his eye, he's trying to blink it out, he can't maybe open it a little bit, and then after 4.5 minutes, he's like, fuck, I can't see. I would have been able to accept that. But the fact immediately he's telling the ref, I cannot see. And then the second he gets that rag, he's just...
I do understand overall what MMA JOEY is saying there. And for the people overall that believe that Tom Aspinall had quit or that he was looking for a way out, it's very, very possible, because I was wondering a little bit about that as well.
He's covered. I'll put that back on the screen. He just got it pressed in there. Never even trying to continue. It really was a horrible look, and it was a disaster for Tom Aspinall. And this entire fight week was a disaster for Tom Aspinall. I say a bit of this satirically for those of you who
The fight week in general overall was a little bit of a disaster. This whole entire fight card, in my view, was really not that good. Then the main event, which was clearly the most exciting fight and the most anticipated fight, ends in disaster. And then the Joseph Parker versus Fabio Wardley fight, great fight, but I thought it was kind of anticlimactic at the end. I thought that it was a bad stoppage. Not saying, I'll do a video about that as well. But anyway.
don't know, but some of this, there's mixed in truth here. Tom Aspinall has no personality. He has no IG followers. He walked out to an empty arena. He's talking about ducking top 10 contenders because they're friends. He's talking about, his dad's talking about him leaving for boxing. His entire quote unquote aura is built off John Jones and John Jones not wanting to fight him. And then he gets outclassed for 4.5 rounds and then quits after an eye poke.
He just said that Tom Aspinall got outclassed for 4.5 rounds. I think you mean 4.5 minutes.
It's really not a good look at all for Tom Aspinall. And I do feel bad for him. And I think they'll book this rematch. Cyril Gane will win this rematch.
I'm not really quite sure who's going to win the rematch. I'll have to do a little bit more studying. Overall, Tom Aspinall did show a lot of the faults that I've always seen within him, which is that he does keep his hands down very, very low. He does need to move his head off the center line a bit more. He is going to have to make some adjustments within this fight. And this will prove to us, especially if Cyril Gane can make it out of the first couple of rounds, how technical and how good and how intelligent of a fighter that Tom Aspinall really is. And also, B, overall, how much heart he truly has. And, can he, really, once again, make Cyril Gane, possibly, what's the word that I'm looking for? Can he possibly make adjustments overall no matter what Cyril Gane brings at him? This will really show, once again, what Tom Aspinall is truly made out of.
Aspinall has a minute, maybe 2 minutes to land a big shot. He may be able to do that. Maybe he gets it done. Maybe he KOs Cyril Gane in the first minute or two of a rematch. I don't think Tom Aspinall is going to be coming in with a lot of confidence going into the rematch, considering how badly he got busted up in this fight. And also, if he suffered an eye injury, who knows how long he's going to be out? Is he going to be out again for a long time? And one thing I do want to cover, okay, because there's some people who have used this and said, Joey, how is this any different than Leon Bilal? They think they got me. I mean, this is crazy. I can't believe the MMA fan base is this dumb. But I'll break it down. There's some people like, Joey, you said we didn't know what would have happened in Bilal Leon because of the eye poke and this and that. Leon landed one fucking head kick in the first round on a short notice Bilal against a short notice Bilal 4 years prior to the rematch. I'm talking from rematch to the original fight. Maybe 3 years. I don't even remember at this point. And then the eye poke happened and the fight got stopped.
I remember that eye poke. I believe that it was a pretty bad eye poke. So I understand why MMA JOEY says that one is a little bit different. But still, we don't know how bad the eye poke was for Tom Aspinall. And it's clear that MMA JOEY, that, he wants Tom Aspinall to be massively overrated or the guy that he claims to be, because it's very obvious that either A, he has a bone to pick with him, or B, he just doesn't see him as good as what other people say. So, of course, he wants his narrative proven correct.
That head kick, it was really 50-50. It was really 50-50. Tom Aspinall does not have cardio. Bilal's known for his cardio. Even at that point, was known for his cardio.
Right, but how do we know that Tom Aspinall does not have cardio? What is your evidence? Like I said, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something that someone can point out to me, but pretty much from what I've seen, even when it goes into the second round, Tom Aspinall appears to be quite fresh and has good stamina. Now, in his earlier days, he did appear a little bit chubbier, not in as good of condition, but he appears to have fixed that. Like I said, how do we know that he does not have stamina? Once again, just because a fighter always gets stoppages within the first couple of rounds does not mean that they don't have stamina. Take a look at Khamzat Chimaev. People were saying the same thing, about him and saying that, Khamzat does not have the stamina overall, to beat DDP, all sort of stuff, and then he completely dog walks him for 5 rounds.
And then you fast forward years later where Bilal's gotten better, it's massively different. It's massively different. Tom Aspinall starts fast. He gets quick finishes. If he doesn't, we don't know. Tom Aspinall...
Right, we don't know. So why are you talking shit about overall how he doesn't have stamina? How are you going to just say overall that you don't know, and then you're going to claim that Tom Aspinall has dog shit stamina based off of no evidence whatsoever? Like, come on, man.
It was the real Khamzat. Everyone in the Khamzat DDP fight was like, Khamzat early, DDP late. Khamzat early.
Agreed, which is why I just mentioned that.
DDP late. It was Tom Aspinall earlier, Gane late, but Gane whooped his ass early too. Because Aspinall, he has to find that big shot. He lunges in. His kickboxing isn't that good. His chin's up in the air. Look at his chin right here.
His chin is very much in the air. Aspinall, in my view, is a very good boxer for the UFC. However, he does have some problems. Tom Aspinall is very, very talented, but he does not move his head off the center line very well. He has his chin very, very high up in the air, and his hands are down extraordinarily low. So he is going to have to fix that, once again, in order to win the rematch. And he's going to have to also establish a lot more low kicks. Because if he does not, Gane is going to take advantage of that. Gane is also someone that has his chin oftentimes high up in the air, but Tom Aspinall was getting pieced up in this fight, and he's lucky he did not get knocked out with a certain shot. So he's going to have to make some massive improvements.
I tried to tell you guys. His chin is up in the air constantly. Even in the highlights when they're showing the Pavlovich fight, and he's like leaning back, it looks like shit.
I will say this about Tom Aspinall. His head movement is definitely overrated. Don't get it twisted. He's someone that has still relatively good head movement, but when you take a look at a UFC fighter that actually has great head movement at peak form, you're talking about guys like Dustin Poirier, you're talking about guys like Ilia Topuria. Ilia Topuria has the best all-around head movement and is probably the best all-around boxer for a UFC fighter that I've ever seen. It's not even close, which is why he's been able to stop guys like Charles Oliveira and Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway, and all those guys were debatably bigger than him. Ilia Topuria is one of the greatest fighters I've ever seen. But anyways, point overall is that Ilia Topuria is someone that's so hard to catch because not only does he change levels vertically, but he moves his head off the center line, from side to side. So anyway.
Like his chin is there to be had, and Cyril Gane was a pro kickboxer for a while, or was it Muay Thai? It was kickboxing. Cyril Gane, right?
If Cyril Gane did kickboxing, then that would probably explain a lot of why he fights that way and has a Muay Thai background. Now, of course, you can still be in kickboxing, and I believe, have a Muay Thai background, but, still, that would explain overall why he moves around the way that he does, because he honestly appears to have some sort of a Taekwondo or kickboxing type of background, the way that he moves.
I'm pretty sure. Cyril Gane had like a bunch of pro kickboxing bouts. And Tom Aspinall just lunges in with big power shots. All Cyril Gane does have...
Well, Tom Aspinall overall is a pretty good striker. He does know how to set up certain shots. But Tom Aspinall is going to have to throw a lot more feints. He was kind of just standing in Cyril Gane's face, kind of waiting for him to react, trying to punch him between the shots. And you can punch him between the shots at certain times, but you have to make sure that you're not getting timed. And a very good part of the reason why he was getting so easily timed is because there were no feints coming from Tom Aspinall. He was just very reactionary. You have to, once again, in order to get your offense off, you have to throw certain feints and fakes, and you have to set it up. So once again, anyway.
All Cyril Gane has to do is avoid the big shots of Aspinall early, drag him into deep waters, and whoop his ass. Cyril Gane beat him up in the first round. How do you think the rest of that fight was going to go? Could Aspinall have found a KO?
Right, but we don't know for sure. Once again, we can take a look at certain other fights. We can take a look at Alex Pereira against Israel Adesanya, Alex Pereira against, that overall of other fighters, and say, oh, well, that fight would have went down like that, but we don't completely know. And there have been other fights as well where the fighter was behind, and then overall they ended up getting the KO or eventually figuring it out. So I can't just base it off of one round, dude. Now I understand where you're coming from, but it's very clear that MMA JOEY is trying to jump the gun on certain things because he wants his narrative to be true and he wants to be proven correct.
Shot sure. But the longer the fight went, and I said this and I'm consistent, the longer the fight went, the more it favored Cyril Gane. And I'll tell you, after seeing this fight, I favor Cyril Gane even more. Because Tom Aspinall, I always say this.
I'll have to do a little bit more research with Tom Aspinall and some of his other fights, but from what I've seen, I probably would favor Tom Aspinall in a rematch, but if Cyril Gane ended up winning, I would not be surprised. But we'll see.
You can't elevate a guy off a loss. Tom Aspinall was elevated simply off John Jones haters. And I hate to...
Well, that's somewhat true, but at the end of the day, he also was elevated because he was running through the heavyweight division and even beat guys like Alexander Volkov with relative ease and also beat Sergey Pavlovich when Pavlovich was looked at as the number one contender, and he knocked him out within 2 minutes? Probably not even that, more like 1 minute.
Say it, but it's true. That is the honest to God reality of the MMA community. The MMA community desperately elevated Tom Aspinall because they hated John Jones so much they wanted him to lose, and John Jones not wanting to fight Tom Aspinall because of risk versus reward. They wanted it to tarnish John Jones's legacy to the...
I agree slightly with you there. But the point also is that Tom Aspinall was the rightful contender. He was someone overall that once again, he was the true contender. He beat Sergey Pavlovich.
Point they elevated Tom to a godlike figure. Well, guess what? When he stepped in there against the toughest test of his career, Cyril Gane, Gane touched him up with ease. Had him breathing out of his mouth, had him looking up at the clock with 2 minutes and 42 seconds to go in the first round. How do you think 5 rounds was going to go? I don't think it was going to go too well for Tom Aspinall. So I hope the eye is fine. I hope there's no serious injury. I hope there's not a detached retina. Maybe there will be. Even so, if that completely dismisses, well, Tom Aspinall, there's no way he could have continued. I think he could have continued. I think the ref would have let him continue. Dana's actually pissed at Tom Aspinall, by the way, which couldn't.
Well, of course, Dana White's pissed off at Tom Aspinall. Let's be real. Dana White isn't on Tom Aspinall's side. it is what it is. And on top of that, he's a little bit pissed off that the main event didn't continue. But it's whatever. But Dana White, for whatever reason, I don't know if John Jones has pictures of him somewhere or what, but that dude is on John Jones's dick. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Got even worse. I mean, no pay-per-view sales as well on this. No Instagram followers, no personality, no, the crowd wasn't even into this fight. I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. You guys get the point. It's a bit satirical there. But now Dana's...
Well, I'd have to really take a look at that. But MMA Joey, oftentimes when he's trying to prove his point, he does go a bit far in trying to not only prove their lack of skills or how overrated they are, but how they're also not a star.
Been pissed at Tom. I can't tell you if he could have continued. He was talking about Tom like he talked about Armin when Armin pulled out with that back injury against Islam earlier this year. Dana has already committed to running the rematch. I believe that Gane will win the rematch. I believe that Tom was massively overrated, maybe bought into his own hype, and maybe underestimated Cyril Gane a bit. People forget that Cyril...
I do think that that's a very high possibility. I think that there's a very high possibility that Tom Aspinall underestimated that of his Cyril Gane.
Cyril Gane only lost to Francis Ngannou and John Jones. I mean, that's a crazy...
Probably should have lost to Alexander Volkov in the rematch too. But, anyway. To be fair, though, I'd have to rewatch that. From what I've seen, it looked like it was a tough fight. The first time that I had watched, a little bit of it, it looked like Volkov probably should have pulled it off. But to be fair, I'd have to watch that a little bit more in depth.
2 losses to have on your resume. So I think Tom, maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Because maybe Tom shores up some holes, but... Man, the shot looked ugly when he's most explosive in the first round. Couldn't get Cyril Gane down, was getting tagged on the feet, was walking in the jabs, got his nose bloodied and battered. All in the first round. That's Tom Aspinall's best round. So I don't even think
it's his best round, but has Tom Aspinall proved to us that he really shorts out in the other rounds? Because so far from what I've seen in the second round, he pretty much appears just as fresh as what he does in the first. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's what I've seen so far.
Any comparison to a Bilal Muhammad, Leon Edwards 1 and 2, it just makes absolutely no sense. So hopefully they rebook this soon. I favor Cyril Gane in the rematch. I told you guys. I told you. Tom Aspinall was criminally overrated. This isn't a full victory lap. Make no mistake about it. This isn't a full victory lap. But this was a W. Everyone that laughed at me when
it was a W for you, yes. But what ends up happening once again, if Tom Aspinall ends up completely dominating him in the rematch? Pretty much if Tom Aspinall ends up dominating him in the rematch, what that's pretty much going to prove to me is a couple of things. That overall, that a lot of these narratives that Tom Aspinall, that he doesn't have stamina after the first couple of rounds, that all that has pretty much been based off of stuff that people have no idea on. And to be fair, we don't know. It could be true, it could be not true. But I'm not going to state that when the man has never even had a 5-round fight before. I can't tell you that. So, I mean, it just is what it is. I can base it off of certain other factors, maybe like taking a look at his shape or what I've seen from other previous fights. But so far from what I've seen, he does not appear to be a guy that is just going to short out, after the first round. I could be wrong, but we'll see. And then on top of that, MMA Joey, he just really wants to prove his point. But if he also dominates Cyril Gane in the rematch, that will also prove to me that, he kind of underestimated him a little bit in this first fight. Tom Aspinall kind of came out there in the motions, and to be honest with you, he looked like he eventually expected to hit Cyril Gane and just knock him out pretty easily. And I don't think that he can fight Cyril Gane in that type of manner because he's a little bit too elusive with his feet and his height and reach, and I think he's going to have to fight very seriously and defensively responsible and move in and outside of the range for a full 5 rounds potentially. So we'll see.
I said Tom was overrated because look who he's beaten. Curtis Blades scrub. Marcin Tybura, a scrub. The best win is Pavlovich. Pavlovich lost to Volkov, who's a scrub too. Look at his performance
Right, but at the end of the day, once again, was Pavlovich really the same fighter after he ended up losing to Tom Aspinall? So, I mean, once again, it is what it is.
Against Dalton Almeida. And that's not Tom's fault. Tom is still one of the best heavyweights in the world. But we got to stop elevating these guys like they're the next big thing. Michael Bisping fought with one eye. Shara Bullet fights with one eye. Tom Aspinall, after sitting out for 14 months, quit after...
Right, just because they did it means that Tom Aspinall should possibly risk his title. Like, come on, dude.
Getting his nose battered in the first round. So that pretty much sums up the main event of UFC 321. Please do me a favor. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for watching.
But anyways, that pretty much is about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to y'all later. But MMA JOEY, of course, is on one, and we'll see if he's correct. We'll see, because like I said, I'm not saying that I'm 100% correct either. You never know about a fighter that does not have enough information on them. But we'll see. But this rematch is going to be humongous for Tom Aspinall's career. He's going to have to do, a lot better. He's going to have to, in order to keep that aura, he is going to have to beat, Cyril Gane in dominant fashion, or at least very clearly beat him. And if he does not, he is going to be looked at as one of the bigger hype jobs, overall in recent history. Even though, of course, he was elevated champion, but at the end of the day, when you fought the most talented guy that you ever fought, you ended up losing, and people were talking about you beating John Jones. He is going to overall, once again, receive a lot of criticism if that happens. But we'll see. We'll see. At the current moment, I would probably favor Tom Aspinall in a rematch, but you never know. I'll do the most amount of research possible, of course, when it's set up next time, and we'll see what happens. But that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.